Hello, 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 and welcome to another exciting episode of Loki SD, where we discuss filmmaking and queer elements in the TV show Loki.
Last week, I got to just gush about my 10 favorite shots from the episode, and we also talked about redefining love and enemies to lovers. I almost said frenemies, but that is a different thing. I would pretty please encourage you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notifications if you'd like to see the last 2 episodes that we have coming out. We're going to talk about episode 6 of Loki next week, and then we're going to do a big round out, just overall, how did we feel about the series video to end things with.
Yep, and during that episode, we're going to be tracking the progress of all 6 of our big queer themes and see how they kind of flowed through the show.
If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a Patreon where for $1 you can get access to our entire library of shows. We do early uploads, extended episodes of this show, all of the other podcasts that we run, and we have a Patreon exclusive show that we're going to be filming our next episode at StellarCon in a couple weeks.
Cool.
And as always, I'd like to remind you that we have a open Discord that you can join. Just search for Montressor Media. We have conversations about Loki Sucks Dick, as well as the show there, plus just tons of other film stuff and memes, and it's Discord, you get it. It's just weird, man.
Pretty much.
And last but not least, please give our social medias a follow. You can see clips from the show as we put them out early. You can also interact with us basically anytime, and we're just hanging out waiting for you at this point.
Pretty much.
So, Aaron, what did you think of episode 5 of Loki?
Oh my god. First of all, we have to get into our first question, which is, was there enough Casey in this episode?
God, I almost, today was thinking about cutting this segment just because I have been let down and hurt so much that I don't know if I'm going to make it in episode 6 and I don't get any Casey.
I'm of two minds of it. I think he could have just been like a seed to start the story, but that doesn't seem right because I feel like a lot of the things that have just been like noteworthy at one point in the show have come back to be important later. So yeah. I just think it would be funny if like he was the big bad in a disguise and just like the big bad all along was this random, guy in the desk in the corner and that just has these infinity stones and like, oh, yep, they're not that important. I think that would be hiding in plain sight. It's a great idea.
The only thing I'm asking for, it just to be satisfied, is a passing shot of Loki coming back into the TVA and Casey going, "Hey, fish guy," and that's it. If that was it, I'm happy. Just one morsel. I think I've been so starved for Casey. I just need a little morsel to end it.
He was so great. He's such a charming character. If he does not come back at some point in time, I will be very dismayed.
And then you were just astounded at the people not getting the joke in this episode with Gator Loki.
Yeah. I don't know what the problem was. I read a couple of articles before the show just to kind of get an idea for what other people's feelings were, and everybody was referring to Alligator Loki biting President's hand off as a like a Star Wars type hand removal moment, and I'm like, oh my god, that is Captain Hook right there.
It's, yeah, literally, just like, guys.
And Hiddles would be a great Captain Hook, and like, with the like hair and the kind of jaunty posture that he had going on, like, totally could see that.
Then give him a little facial hair, you know what I mean, the goatee and mustache. Yes. Oh, he'd rock it. It'd be so good.
I also think it would be super funny if President Loki was only there for that, like, one, 5-minute thing, and he was in all of that promo stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I get the comic book reference of it, and it does strike me as a character that could just pop up later. Like, Loki losing a hand and then not being reused in a later season of Loki just seems like a missed opportunity of, yes. Just a blink and you'll catch, like, oh, there he is. He's still missing a hand.
That's definitely my hope with a lot of these Easter eggs, that like they're Easter eggs this season, they're references this season, and next season they're going to be like actual like plot points or like, I will get you.
Right. Yeah. Just I'm trying to think of other media that does stuff like that, like the two pirates in Pirates of the Caribbean, the one with the wooden eye. I don't remember their names. There's like 70 of those movies now.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know them.
But they have that like running thing where they just kind of pop up occasionally, and every time they do, you're like, oh, these guys, I like these guys.
Yep.
And nothing thematically about them like is adding anything to the story. It's just, oh, these guys. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I like those little kind of character moments a lot. Especially we got a lot of really great character moments in this this episode. Just a lot of great camaraderie, bonding, the proverbial and literal calm before the storm.
Yeah. I don't know if you caught it, and maybe I'm crazy for picking it out, but Richard E. Grant's body language with the cape made me think that he was loving having that cape on and off set.
Probably.
Like the way he like wrapped his hands up out of the outside and he like swished it around, and like he was just having a great old time with that great big yellow cape.
Yeah. Yeah, like sometimes when you have an actor in a costume like that, because that is objectively a ridiculous costume. I think we can agree.
Oh, it's so silly. It's so silly.
He's got so much gravitas in it.
Yeah, if you would have told me at the beginning of all this that we would get a classic 1960s Loki like 1-to-1 costume, and it would be the penultimate like power move of the series, I would have been like, that's not possible. You can't do that. That doesn't work.
Yeah, it really feels like at some point they were just throwing shit in the episodes to see what they could get away with. So far, it's working for me.
But it's the show's so absurd that it's hard to like fault it. Like you can't fault it for being the one absurd moment of the series because it's not.
Exactly.
So, do you think? And maybe this is a better question for the audience. Do you think that Classic Loki's actually dead?
No, I don't.
I'm of two minds. Where if that is how he went, good for him. Like that's. We got literally one episode's worth of character growth, and he changed as a person.
He nailed it.
And that's great news for our Loki too, right? Is that no matter how old he gets, he still is capable of change. However, and we'll bring this up again in the filmmaking segment, but it sounded like his story about Thanos might have been a little bit of foreshadowing for what went down at the end of the episode.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see how his little bits of wisdom, because he sprinkled a little bit of wisdom throughout along the way, and each of the different Lokis on Loki World had their like different kind of. They're the same, but also they have a kind of differing perspective, and I thought that his was the most interesting because I think long periods of deep solitude always make you a particular way, a particular sort of reflective.
Yeah.
If I had one complaint, and it's kind of already been a thing in the series, and I'm really curious to see where they're going with it. And I don't know, I don't want to call it a complaint because like everybody involved with like most of this show is female. Director, writer, cinematographer, lots of women. But the fact that there's only one quote-unquote female Loki, and she's the special one, it does make me worry. Like, why are there not more? Why? It seems like tokenism, and I would hope that a female writing group and a female creative group would be aware of that, and that is in some way going to be a trope that is usually abused, and one that is done in like a good way in this instance. So that's kind of my hope, is that there's like a good twist on it, but I do have some hesitations with that right now.
Yeah, I don't know how they would do it narratively, but it would be great if the reason for doing that is kind of the reverse and like a dunk on Loki, in that like, hey man, if you just allowed yourself to have a little more well, and actually I want to walk that back. I'm going to cut that. Never mind. Yeah, we can end on your thought there. That's fine.
Okay, cool deal.
Well, because as I was saying, I was like, well, no, Loki's gender fluid, so he could think with like more feminine assigned thought processes. But yeah, no, I don't need to say that one.
I mean, I do think that there is an argument that maybe in future seasons that the gender fluidity and the gender differences can be explored more, and that, this is just the first season. It's just 6 episodes, and they are doing a lot. Like, you can't expect them to do everything. So
right, yeah, exactly. Well, and like, again, I think we said this in the first episode, what will Disney allow them to do is a big question in it, too.
Exactly. One of the things that I really liked about this episode was that you had a lot of, like, physical battles, but you also had like a lot of psychological battles as well. And I love how physical Sylvie gets to be, and I love how Sophia Di Martino. Is it Sophia Di Martino?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please edit that out. Okay. And I really love how Sophia Di Martino, I love her like physicality and just like the power and everything like that. And just like knowing that she was filming this while she was breastfeeding and everything like that. She had just recently had a kid, and it just makes it all that more impressive. That scene where she's running away from the storm, and then we get this great buddy cop moment between her and Mobius. I loved everything about that.
We had mentioned a couple weeks ago that or it was just last week actually, when we thought that maybe Loki had died forever and they were just going to like resituate. That is an example, that them two in the car. Wow, them two in the car. Where am I from? West Virginia?
Yeah.
That might be a great example, those two in the car, of what the show could turn into if Loki kind of flits away back into the like film universe, and then Sylvie becomes the lead of the Loki series.
Yeah.
That pairing, I'm here for it.
You know what I would love to see? I would love to see a scenario, at least for a season or two, where Tom Hiddleston's Loki is leading like a team of his little misfits, and they just do good deeds throughout the galaxy, and but they do it in their own mischievous ways and everything like that. I think that has a lot of potential, kind of like, I don't want to say like Captain America, but kind of, sort of.
What?
I think that could be really neat.
Yeah.
I would be really disappointed if they set up this really beautiful thing between Sylvie and Loki, and it just ended at the end of season 1. Like, it doesn't need to continue on to, they get married and they have babies or whatever, but I want it to be a thread that, falling in love for both of those characters was a big deal, and it's something that has taken them a lot of time. Like, even a survival love situation, they only at the very end, like, they can't verbally admit to each other how they're feeling or anything like that, but, they just have that, like, hand-holding moment at the end, and I really love when two disaster queers are just holding hands in the face of just certain doom. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I honestly, because we only have one episode left of this series, I think it's a little extra theory crafting is okay in this episode.
Yep.
I'm very curious how this ends up. So I'm going to use what you just said as kind of the jumping off point, because I can definitely see the series ending with just the total demolition of the TVA and just a couple characters surviving through the end, and then season 2 is them finding out that what they've done has affected the timeline, and now they have to time travel and fix things.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great time. I'm in for that kind of a show.
Yeah. I can see that.
I could also very easily see this ending with not the end of the TVA and the TVA remaining in power, and them recognizing that it has a different purpose now because of what they've discovered.
Yeah.
I could just as easily see it ending that way, with just our Lokis escaping and surviving.
Yeah. Because escaping and surviving is definitely one of the big themes, as we mentioned. Was that last week?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think it's definitely interesting to see, is the end going to be, or is the continuation of the series going to be that, or are they going to be something more? Like, I think it is interesting to have them form something more permanent and more, like, I guess sustainable.
Yeah.
Like with characters that have healthy interactions and are working together for suitable goals and everything like that. I want to see something like that. I would love to see his character navigating that kind of a situation. I love the idea of, oh fuck, we broke the timeline, now we're responsible for this shit, and them just kind of scrambling, like, kind of like Parks and Rec style, to figure out how you run the timelines.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an incredibly good time to me. And even, like, because we're not sure where Renslayer's going to end up in all this. It seems like she's kind of sus, but also might be aligned in some weird way.
Yeah.
I like she could just as easily end up like in charge of the TVA with now like Mobius and Loki as her shoulder angels trying to steer her which ways to move the TVA going on in the future.
I am convinced she's bad. I'm really hoping they don't. I'm really hoping Kang isn't the big bad, but if he is, I'm hoping they don't do it in the comic books where Ravonna is just like his love toy and everything like that. She's such a like a badass character. She's so fucking cool. She's just incredible. She just owns every scene she's in. I feel like Tom Hiddleston is an amazing actor, but there are a lot of people in this show that are acting circles around him, and I love it, and I think he's here for that. I think he's one of those actors that isn't threatened by that. He just plays off it, he adapts off of it, and that's one of the reasons the show is working so well.
Well, I mean, this last episode, his entire arc was just, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
to everything. He was so done with everything. I don't know where I land on Ravonna being evil, to be honest. If we want to get into a little who's the big bad theory crafting, I'm not 100% sure there's even a villain at the end of this story.
That's the other thing. It may not be.
And so, let's say it is Kang for a second. There's a lot of things pointing to that it could be Kang, or it could be Immortus, which is just Kang again, or it could be somebody else that is also... So for point of reference for our audience, the character Kang the Conqueror might be worth you doing a deep dive because he's kind of been everybody at different points in history.
That's why I think he's Casey, or somebody's Casey. Oh god, that would be so good. It would be so good. I will ride on that high forever if the reason that Casey has been gone all of this time is because he's Kang and he's been like, oh fuck, I need to like get away from this Loki guy and this Sylvie chick. They may like actually fuck my shit up.
You know, that wouldn't be a bad move. I mean, I'll put it this way. I know a lot of people would be very upset with that. Me personally, I'd be very okay with it.
I just want Casey to be important to the plot because I feel like Casey's important to the plot.
Yeah, I mean, if you're switching into like a procedural thing in season 2, Casey's your desk jockey, right? He's like, Casey, we need pulled out of this timeline. He's that guy. But he could also easily be a field agent. I could. Oh man, I want more for him.
Because we had speculated last week that like under that like office jockey outfit that he was just like hench, and then I googled it because I was curious, and yes, he works out. And yes. I'm like, I mean, I'm just saying he has done a lot of action-y roles. I would like to see a lot more of him. He's such a charming guy.
And this also ties back into how Disney kind of does business, which is here's a sampling. Here's the your snack metaphor. Here's our snack sampling. What is everybody eating up a lot of? And if everybody's eating a lot of Casey, well, they push Casey forward.
Casey.
But they do that all the time. And Wanda and Vision, that's how they got greenlit into what they were. They were kind of teased as a thing, and then people said they wanted more, and then by the time you get to Civil War, they're definitely a thing, and holy shit, all the way through Infinity War, and then I guess for Wanda Endgame. But that's how Disney does business. Like, they're not dumb. They know, hey, put a smattering of everything out there, see what gets eaten up. Anything that doesn't, you can clothesline or put somewhere else, and then anything that does, run with it.
Exactly.
Which is... And as I say that, I also know that Black Widow's coming out this week, and she should have had a movie a long time ago.
Gotten so good reviews. I'm so torn about the movie. Like ostensibly, I want it to be good, so we get more like female superhero like things. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But I just Scarlett Johansson. I watched some like interviews of her and Florence Pugh, and I don't know. There's just something about her other than like all of the cultural appropriation bullshit that I just don't vibe with. But like one of the things that I think is important with this show is I really try to make sure that I point out things that I want to see in future shows, because in the rare chance that somebody from Marvel would be to see this, it would be nice if like convey like, hey, Casey is a popular character. We do love him and everything like that, because I think it's an interesting thread to tug on a little bit more.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you and for the comment section.
Okay.
Hypothetically, if you got pruned into the void and you found out that the void was full of you, what would the void be like?
I don't honestly know that it would be substantially different, to be quite honest, since I am kind of a disaster. Um, so okay, you know that scene in, I don't remember it, if it was a Lord of the Rings movie, or if it, I think it was one of the Lord of the Rings movies, where Radagast is on that like sled and he's just like being like pulled through the woods, and like he's got like birds in his beard and everything like that.
Yes, that's the second Hobbit movie.
That is okay. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Yes. Okay. That is basically like the manifestation of my existence. So like make that a world, but also make it a disaster and full of me, I guess.
So you show up in that world, and that is the Aaron that greets you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think it's probably going to be like very similar in the way like people act and the way like everything's destroyed. It's just going to be like trees destroyed, not buildings, because I'm not a very like an urban dwelling critter. I'm kind of
Yeah.
a woodsy folk. Bigfoot just causing cryptid, like a bunch of cryptids in the woods, like Mothman over there, Bigfoot over there. That's it. That's me. Because I don't.
Damn.
Yeah.
Mothman and Bigfoot, I feel like they keep to themselves so much. I can't imagine what they would have to do to cause a Nexus event to get pruned. I guess get seen. Is that why we never see them? We're just never supposed to. So they just keep getting pruned.
I don't know. Or maybe like maybe like a human fell in love with a Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot's like, I don't know, maybe, and then the TV guy's like, nope, nope, nope. You know what I another thread that I really hope pays off is
Oh, tell me.
when Sylvia's like, I wish you would conjure me a new outfit.
Oh yeah.
I was really upset that that didn't pay off. So I'm like hoping that there will be like a scene as they like go into a big battle or something like that, and Loki's like, wait, no, you can't go in like this. You need to go in like this. And then they'll like go in with their like matching or like contrasty but matchy outfits and have like a Jesse and James Team Rocket moment.
If that happens, we called it 3 weeks ago when we talked about them coordinating their outfits. We called that shit.
So bad. I love that.
We're out here like calling the oddball like moments, and everyone else is like, it's Mephisto or Nightmare, and it's like, yeah, but what if they coordinated outfits?
This is the gay show. He's talking about coordinating outfits and working together to play Captain Planet on the time.
I love it.
It's so apropos for us.
Maybe that's how they keep Hiddleston around. Is he only has to show up occasionally for like little bits as Captain Loki, and then the rest of the team is like C-20 and B-15 and KC going off on their adventures and being like, okay, we need Loki now, and they call him in.
Well, I love how we know that B-15 is like still alive, just was contained. So I'm like, wait, C-20, where's C-20? When's she gonna come out?
Yeah, exactly.
Because the other thing is like, can the other like TVA people like quote unquote die, or can they just be pruned? Is there just like natural human death?
Great. Okay, so time works differently there. That's been established.
Well, I mean, not like mortality, but like stake through the heart or beheaded or that kind of stuff. Does that kind of mortality impact them? And if so, like how permanent is that?
Yeah. I would assume so, because doesn't Sylvie kind of slice through a bunch of people when she gets into the TVA?
Yeah, and then like we've never seen those people down on the planet.
Yeah,
I feel like there should be
I don't
more
know.
people on this planet.
I think I love the idea that it's mostly Loki's because they're the ones that survive. But this is where everyone ends up, at least for a minute before they get devoured. Right.
This is purgatory.
Yeah, basically. Run away.
Gosh.
Honestly, maybe the biggest like comic book deep lore grab from this for me was Alioth. I was not expecting one of those kinds of comic book pulls, because I mean, say what you will about the Fantastic Four movie from the 2000s, but they did the big gaseous cloud guy, and that's basically what Alioth is.
I was really impressed with the CGI because tons of things have done like the big cloud monster and had it look just like absolutely awful. And, TV show, which it's obviously a Marvel TV budget, but it's not like a movie budget. They still
Yeah.
made that smoke monster look like an amazing. I
Oh,
really
and
loved Goliath.
and Classic Loki's Asgard looked
Oh my gosh, it's
badass.
beautiful.
Why is it? One of my big complaints with the MCU over the years has been how bad the CGI can be. Like, I will throw this up on screen right now. It's a clip of Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster armor, and his head's fucking floating in there. It is not good. So when they switch to the TV shows and these things look like this, like, look at this vista that I'm putting on screen right now. That if you're listening to the podcast version, I apologize. It's just, this stuff's crazy to me.
Good. It's so good, and I think it's because, and I complain constantly that I can't really watch a lot of the Marvel movies as much because they just turn into boring CGI bukkake. But
Yeah.
I just watching the action and the actors, like everybody just acting their ass off. It was so compelling, and just like the filmmaking as a whole in this, just they fucking hit a grand slam from the very first shot. That, like, the camera just sort of idly roaming and just like not adhering to any rules, flipping upside down. It kind of gave me like 2001: A Space Odyssey kind of vibes, and just like floating around the TVA with like it was like kind of like a fisheye lens shot.
Yeah.
It was
it
so good.
Spirals through the room. Yeah, just
Yeah.
and the first pass over the void where you see like the dilapidated buildings and the old Avengers Tower, and the Thanos copter shows up later.
Yes.
Did you catch
Very
that?
interesting. Yes, I did.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, what? Okay, so let me explain for anyone who doesn't understand. You know who Thanos is, I assume. You watch these movies. In the comics, comics can be very silly sometimes, and the Mad Titan that threw a planet at Tony Stark, yeah, he just had a helicopter at one point when he was fighting just S.H.I.E.L.D. That's a thing that happened.
So many weird things. The comic books are chaotic, but I think that's one of the reasons that I love it, and I love that they haven't tried to make this feel too realistic. Like, if they would have done this, like, Dark Knight style or something like that.
Ugh. That sounds
could you imagine
awful.
Tonally? Yeah, awful. Absolutely awful. That is why tone matters when you consider your content and your audience.
Very, very much so. And tone also determines what you can and can't get away with.
Yep.
In this week's filmmaking segment, I'd like to switch over to the writing side a little bit, and I'd like to talk about something that now I think we have enough information that talking about it now will make the last episode a little more interesting to watch.
Sounds good to me.
So I would like to talk about the story circle or the hero's journey, depending on which school of writing you come from. They're both essentially the same thing. There's just different titles for different stuff within them, if that makes sense. So the overall idea is that there are, in general, 8 steps that your protagonist is going to go through across a well-crafted story. If you look at stories across history and time, this is generally how humans have learned to tell stories. And I say that with a just great big fat asterisk, because there's no right 100% or wrong 100% way to do anything.
Yeah.
And part of the fun of writing an art is that it's open-ended.
Yeah. And part of it's cultural, too. Like, a lot of these stories
100%.
are, like, Western.
Yeah, exactly. So there's 8 steps, like I said, and I want to go through each step and kind of compare and contrast what we've seen so far in the series and how it matches up with these different steps. And then when we get down to step 6, this is where we'll switch to conjecture, and you get to have a little bit of fun with the last episode. First step is your character is in a comfort zone. And I had to do a little backbending for this one, but I think the comfort zone was actually kind of a metatextual comfort zone, which is us as the audience knowing the MCU and knowing where Loki is at the beginning of the series in the Avengers clips, essentially, is what I'm talking about here.
Makes sense.
That that's what I saw as the comfort zone. I don't. He kind of gets dumped into the adventure straight away, but we've seen enough of him that we know what his comfort zone looks like. If that tracks.
We can also say that while this adventure starts in medias res, that we have content before that, so that even though the content does not exist in this show, we have the comfortable state in media that is still in the franchise. Like, it would just be like if this was a multi-part series or something like that, like a multi-part epic, you would still consider that early part of the character's story as like their comfort zone. So I'd kind of say Avengers is their comfort zone, and almost like kind of the decision to steal the Tesseract as well, just because I feel like for Loki, chaos and making decisions like that kind of is his comfort zone.
Yeah, that totally tracks. Actually, he's used to getting kind of thrown around. That makes sense to me.
I think when you grow up in really chaotic situations, you're attracted to chaos, so your life just kind of boop 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 boop, lots of chaos, and that seems to be the type of thing that has happened with Loki.
I know a lot of people like that are they're happiest when there's drama and chaos and things going on, and they don't like things to be still or status quo or whatever.
Yep.
So then the next step in our hero's journey is going to be they want something. So we're going from kind of setting up them as a character into giving them a goal of what they want. Now, that could be anything depending on the story you're looking at. Like Luke Skywalker wants to join the rebellion, wants to learn about his father, wants to become a Jedi, that kind of stuff. Aaron, what do you think Loki wanted at the beginning of the series, and do you think it started in the first episode, or do you see it starting later on?
So I think his wants have changed a couple of times, and I think that's more realistic than a lot of stories where you have a character that either wants something but then is kind of reluctant in pursuing it, or somebody who wants something and is dogged at pursuing it. Loki kind of starts and stops a couple of times. It kind of reminds me of my progress through college, where I didn't really know which major to pursue at first.
Ooh, yeah.
So I feel like that was a more human look at kind of getting that goal. Initially I think he just wanted more information so he could survive. And then, he kind of okay, I want to meet the TVA. I want to overthrow the TVA. And then he meets Sylvie and he's like, okay, well, wait a minute. These things that she's saying, these are interesting to me. And then, his goal kind of becomes more aligned with, well, wait a minute, Sylvie's important, but also the things that she stands for are important too, not because they're important to her, but because they're important to me,
Yeah. Yeah, and those are exactly the two that I picked out as well. It went from I want to do something to the TVA, escape it, control it, take it down. Those have kind of been the steps across the series, but it's really turned into I want to be with and learn from Sylvie. Has really turned into the want, because that's pushed his decision making across the last 3 episodes, really. When he follows Sylvie into the door into the TVA, that maybe he didn't know it or not yet, but he was so curious about her that's why he ran in after her, and he's been running through doorways chasing her ever since.
I really love that. Because it's so counter to what a lot of narratives have, and I like the way their characters are being handled. I think they're being handled in a very natural, I don't know, there's a lot of ways that it could feel icky, but it doesn't, because both of the characters really seem to want to grow. I don't know that Sylvie realizes it. I think Sylvie to a degree still thinks it's just survivalism and I want to be better so I can overthrow the TVA. But I think that Sylvie does want to just be a better person that doesn't have to run, that can have a normal life.
Yeah, and you even saw in that in the memory with B20 the way that she was able to kind of mask and act like a normal person in that memory was it a mojito bar or a tequila bar or something like that?
Margaritas. She likes margaritas, that's right. Yep.
Margarita. Yeah, there we go. And you could see that there's definitely something about that life that she wanted. She was like empathetic towards B20 and even to C-15 as well.
Yeah.
In taking her back through her memories, which we didn't get to see, but we saw her reaction to it. And so I think Sylvie wants, and actually this might be a fun one to go back through and see what Sylvie's hero's journey has been as well, because I think Sylvie's gone from wanting to take down the TVA to wanting to have some kind of life outside of just always running.
Exactly. She, I think, really wants to not be alone. Like, I think, you know, so much of her life has been not having anybody. And, you know, there's talk when they're finally getting together, like, you know, how do I know you're not going to betray me? And those conversations are so much more meaningful to both parties and so much more challenging to both parties when you both know that you have both betrayed everybody else in your life. And I feel like you've got that. But then on the other hand, I feel like for a lot of people, not everybody, as I've learned throughout the past year, but for a lot of people, if they go through suffering and they see through other people going through that suffering, they don't want those people to have to go through that suffering anymore. So I really feel like she was dedicated in like trying to protect the other people at the TVA. Like, she didn't really want to hurt them unless they were like being ordered to kill her and stuff like that. She just felt more sympathetic to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can tell like I think the burn of her youth to just want to kill everyone at the TVA probably faded away once she figured out, because we don't see her learn this information either. It feels like something that she's learned across this, you know, kind of time scheme that she's been up to.
Yep.
So the third step is our hero enters an unfamiliar situation.
All of them.
Yeah, literally every character has been kind of turned on its head. That comes out in the filmmaking, the twisting, turning camera at the opening of every episode of everything's getting turned upside down and on its head is a visual metaphor.
Symbolism is so good.
Yeah, exactly. So in Loki's case, he just kind of gets dumped right into the unfamiliar situation. Yep. But I would argue that the unfamiliar situation for him didn't really... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it didn't creep up until a little later on in the series where he starts to learn to love Mobius as a friend, and then maybe a little more romantically with Sylvie. That's his unfamiliar situation.
Yeah, I think that... shit, what was I gonna say? I think that just going to a new place and doing a new thing that's all like magical and stuff like that, it's a very old hat for him. He's very adaptable as a character, but like this whole love thing, that is completely new. That is completely out of left field.
Yeah, absolutely. Something they've never even experimented with within the MCU, except for his love for his brother and his family in general, I guess.
Well, just not a lot of romance in the MCU to begin with, and a lot of it is really... I mean, Pepper Potts and Tony was handled weird because of the Gwyneth Paltrow situation. Like, even when she was there, it was very... I don't know.
Yeah.
Frigid
Black
feeling?
Widow and Hulk was kind of whiffed.
Yeah.
I think Peggy
a little bit harder.
Yeah, Peggy and Steve are really like the only, or were the only power couple in the MCU. I think they're a lot less interesting than Loki and Sylvie, though.
They are, yeah. I love them, and I really hope that it's not one of those situations where at the last episode one of those two characters is just permanently gone, and then it's like, oh yeah, okay, next season is going to be that character figuring out how to live without the other character. Because I mean,
right.
Kate Herron has said that they're like her goal from the beginning was to make a love story. So my hope is that it ends up as a love story, at least for an episode. At least give me some peace.
The fourth step in our journey is our hero has to adapt to this new situation, which, if this last episode didn't tell you, we're at least to step 4. His genuine friendship hug with Mobius, and then him holding hands and learning enchantment to help save Sylvie and get them to their final goal. If that's not him adapting to this new situation, and you don't have to be an expert in it to have adapted. You just have to be willing to face it. There's that saying that, bravery isn't the lack of fear, it's facing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say conservatively, Loki's at least this far in the process at this point, which tracks. 5 episodes in, the fourth or fifth step. So, but any other characters that stand out to you of having adapted to stuff within the series?
I mean, I think all of them, like pretty much all of the TVA agents that have learned learned that they're variants. Sylvie, all of the other Lokis have had to adjust to a wild variety of situations. I think Mobius's transition has been the most interesting because he seemed the most dedicated to the cause and to Ravonna and everything like that. And then it was just a 360 degree flip. It was just, 180 degree. That's a full circle. It was just a 180 degree flip. And
it's my fault. I said story circle, so now circles are in our heads.
Circles in my brain. Yes. Yeah, I think everybody really has. And that's one of the best things about the show. Even Ravonna, like, she's had power turned on its head, so, like, had to sort out what to do.
Yeah. Well, and this can be said about most writing. If you give all of your characters some kind of assortment of the hero's journey, your entire cast is going to feel even more well fleshed out. That's just that's how it works. The more we know about people, the more we can care about them.
The cast in this, every character has some sort of goal and some sort of stake and some sort of like growth that they have gone through, except for Casey, who disappeared in the first episode. Anyway, so
but maybe he's been off screen learning about fish this whole time, and that's been his adventure.
Yes, they're just gonna find him fishing somewhere at the end of the universe. That's fantastic. I love that for him.
If you study fish, you're called Are you an ichthyologist if you study fish?
I believe so. Yes.
I don't know. I say things like that and then think maybe I'll just cut it out, or maybe I'll just throw something up on screen that says I'm a dumbass, which
I'm pretty sure
both have happened.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
So the fifth step, and this is where we get into kind of the shakier waters as to where we are in the series, and we can kind of transfer into what may be lying in store for episode 6. The fifth step is they get what they wanted. And that is very open to interpretation for especially when what they want is open to interpretation. I don't know if we've seen Loki totally get what he wants yet, but there's been enough resolutions across with the characters he's interacted with that I would say if he had his way and got out of everything alive and fine, he would feel successful by the end of this for what he's gone through. So I think he's on step 5. I don't know. What do you think?
I would agree with that. And I mean, I would think step 5 obviously is generally one of those steps that takes, you don't just get it. A lot of times there's a process of like getting it and learning what it means and things like that. So that doesn't necessarily need to happen instantaneously. I think that you kind of have that like combo moment where like, the like Eliath parts and you like see what's beyond, but then you also have them like hand in hand, so you kind of have them like getting both of the things that they wanted all at once,
right?
And I think that we're probably going to see some fallout from that, because even getting what you want, there's always going to be challenges and things like that, so it's gonna be interesting to see how they handle that.
Yeah, and the very next step, number 6, is and then you pay a price for it. By the way, I'm using the Dan Harmon Story Circle just because it uses broader, easier to use language.
Yeah.
The original hero's journey has like entering the unfamiliar situation is entering the cave, and it's like I want this to be accessible, so I'm doing the Dan Harmon version. Also, we brought up fucking Rick and Morty like 3 times on this show already because, hey, it's a show about sci-fi tropes. Shocking. But yeah, number 6 is they pay a price for it, and that's episode 6, everybody.
I think somebody is gonna like perma-die, and I'm not sure who. I feel like we need some like actual stakes, because the hey, death isn't real thing, like I feel like we need to establish a stake that somebody can't come back from.
Yeah, and depending on who it is will carry differently across the future stories that get told here too, whether in the series or in the greater MCU as a whole.
Yeah.
depending on who it is, you could see very, very different effects.
Yeah.
The seventh part of the circle is the return home. They go back to some version of what their stable situation would be, whether that's
Yeah.
the direct return home. Which, that's like the end of every Star Wars trilogy ends in Tatooine for exactly this reason, guys.
Yep.
Like, this isn't anything
It's not
you
rocket
haven't seen
science.
before.
It's
Right.
not rocket science.
But I think that one poses an interesting question for the series, and also allows me to jump in and say, you don't have to do all the steps either. I
Yeah.
could totally see them skipping this step and just being like, oh no, there's no home for him to return to.
That's interesting foreshadowing to our big queer theme segment later.
Yeah. It almost feels like they've planned out a lot of this stuff.
Sometimes you can't go home again.
Exactly.
Maybe
And
home may just end up being the TVA just because that's what's accessible to them.
right. And yeah, so that and A New Home totally fits in with that idea and theme within storytelling. So
Yeah.
there will be some kind of resolution, I'm sure. I'm almost positive Loki doesn't go back to his main timeline.
I can't really
I would
see
be
that.
shocked if they did that.
No. I think one of the things that they're doing really well with the TV series is kind of allowing them to exist sort of a little bit, especially with this one outside of the Prime MCU, to
Yeah.
be able to have a little bit more flexibility and fun, and especially with this show and what it's trying to do and its dynamic and stuff like that. I would be totally fine if they just took Loki, completely out of the Prime MCU, and then like this is just what Loki's do for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the after they've returned home in a way that they are like genuinely and obviously changed. The story could not have taken place if the change hadn't happened, because you can't just get what you want and then go back to exactly the way you were. You have to have learned something, whether it's a lesson, whether it's character development. Something has changed within the characters, and this one I think is probably going. Say that again.
We already got this one.
Yeah, and this one I think is, especially for this series, going to be very open to interpretation and kind of vague. I think for me, I agree. We've already got it. We've seen Loki shift into a hero on his own without having to like be under Thor's shadow.
Yeah.
And we've got to see multiple Lokis go through that same thing. Like by the end of this series, Kid Loki has now seen two versions of himself successfully change.
Yeah.
That means a lot for young Avengers and stuff that he could be in the future.
Exactly. I'm very excited about Young Avengers. I really hope they don't ruin it.
Yeah. And same goes for other characters. Look at Mobius. How different is Mobius now?
I can't
knowing
wait to
what
see
he
where
knows.
he ends up in episode 6, unless it's dead.
Yeah. I don't see him. Well, okay. We'll
get to that
I
in a
don't see him. I don't see him getting the X. So that's the story circle. You can kind of jump in wherever you want. In steps 5, 6, 7, or 8. I would say 6 is probably our jumping off point for episode 6. Thematically, that makes sense. 3s have been popping up all over the place, and 6 is a multiple of 3. So, I'm pretty sure I'm right on this one. 95%. The other thing I wanted to talk about, though, which is also a writing thing, is foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm. There's a hell of a lot of it.
Yeah. And
This whole episode
specifically,
is literally the calm before a storm, basically.
exactly. And it's not the first one we've seen in the series either.
No, we like storms. We like tempests and tempestuous things.
Which is like, straight pulled out of Greek mythology and stuff like that. That those kinds of stories are, man versus nature and unsolvable forces and things like that. One bit of foreshadowing that really grabbed me was the conversation between Loki and Sylvie when they were under the blanket.
Oh, yeah?
So Sylvie says, how do I know that in the last moments you're not going to betray me?
Mm-hmm.
And we get a sincere response from Loki. And I would measure the sincerity based off of the sincerity that he gave Mobius in the previous episode.
Yeah.
Now, where I think the foreshadowing lies is a Sylvie double cross.
Yeah.
And how I think that might play out is the idea of Sylvie wants to take down the TVA, and there may be an alternate way of doing that based on who we meet in this last episode and what the context is. And so I could easily see the rift returning between Loki and Sylvie, of Loki getting an opportunity to run the TVA and Sylvie wanting to take it down, and the characters parting at that point. To me, I just thought it was really interesting that she brought up betrayal because it means it was on her mind, and you could assume that she's genuinely wondering if Loki would betray her, but maybe it's on her mind because she's thinking about doing it.
Yeah, and I really hope that they do it in a way, like if they go that direction, I really hope that they do it in a way that doesn't like render their, like, it has to be something that hopefully that they can come back from. Like, I like the idea of these characters, especially since we know that there's going to be multiple seasons, like, having kind of, like, a romantic dance of, you know, will they or won't they? Like, when are they going to get together? You know, things like that. So it would be nice if it's done in such a way that they can come back from it, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and if the running thing season to season is the enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers, and it's just like a pattern for them, I could see that. I could see it working out pretty well.
It is my big queer theme of the day. You can't go home again. You know, really, and this is interesting. When I had originally, like, we had originally watched the first episode, and I had written down, like, 6 themes that I thought were going to be carried out through. And I had planned to do this theme fairly early on, because there were a lot of episodes that focused on family stuff, but I decided to sit on it. So one of the reasons that I'd held off on it is because an important part of, like, you can't go home again in a narrative is that you have to find, like, a new home, or at least a new family. And I've been kind of waiting for what felt like the final family, as it was.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like Loki has kind of been collecting family members along the way in his little band. You know, he can't go back to Asgard. He can't go back to his, like, version of Thor or anything like that, or at least it's not likely.
Right.
But, you know, he's got Mobius and he's got Sylvie, and it seems like for the most part he's got these other Lokis as well, and they're all working together to build this family. But the thing that's really fascinated me as, like, we've waded through these episodes is just, like, everybody, literally every character in this show cannot go home again.
Yeah.
And that's such a big thing in so many queer people's lives, because for one reason or another, you know, either, you know, they're ostracized from their home because of their family, or, you know, they just, for whatever reason, the situation isn't comfortable or safe or, you know, available to them anymore. So we just kind of collect our own friends, or even if we do have a family, you know, if we have a family that is cisgender and heterosexual and does not necessarily understand the queer experience, like, we go out and we find our own queer family, people that understand us. And I love how much of this show has just been a big metaphor about, like, all right, I'm gonna go out and declare myself as gender fluid, and I'm gonna find my big gay family. Like, I love that for this show.
I think it's really interesting, too, that this show's gone out of its way to show why that's important. And it points out that anytime these characters are alone, even the most capable one doesn't want to be alone. And the lesser Lokis, the less capable ones, will literally tear themselves apart without people to be around. And I think that's a really important thing to point out, is like it's not just like a thing that happens. It is a necessity of, like, the human condition to be around people that not just you love, but love you and the things about you.
Exactly.
And that understand the things about you and know how to communicate with you. And so I think putting it behind the guise of, well, it's all the same person, technically just variations of them. And it's like, well,
It's
kind of
very
that's what.
simplified.
Yeah, it's like, but it makes sense. It makes it accessible to be like, well,
Yeah.
why do all these people get along? I get what they have in common. They're all Lokis. How are they
Yeah.
different? And it's the differences that are making them so interesting and yet
Yeah.
still so bonded.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that just reminds me of a good friend group. Like when you have a good friend group, first off, it's really sucky to not be around people that get you, that like people that don't understand you or like the things that you're into, or people that you have to like put up a facade around.
Yeah.
It's so much better to have a group of friends that gets you and that is interested in the same things that you are, and it gives you, that gives you as much as you give them. And it's been really great to see that. And there's a really interesting line of dialogue between Sylvie and Loki where Sylvie says, you know, I don't have friends, I don't have anyone, there are more important things. But are there? And I think that was another piece of foreshadowing, that it really doesn't matter what you have in the world if you're alone. Like, it sucks to be alone. You can have all the material possessions in the world, and you can be, just beautiful, and you can be powerful, and you can have magic, and you can be everything. But if you don't have anybody, what is the point,
Right. And isn't that like perfectly exemplified in classic Loki's character where
Yes.
first of all, I love that our Loki was very curious about his story.
Yeah.
That was the one he was like
He showed
gunning
some
to get.
serious empathy,
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then classic Loki turns around and says, "Literally, I just got sick of not having anybody."
Yep.
And that's why he's so mad
I
at the
left to
TVA.
find Thor.
Yeah.
Ugh,
And
so
and then
tragic.
his line as they're leaving is like, they literally punish us for for trying to fix things or make things any better. And it's true for him too, because
That's
he
another
never got
queer
his.
theme too.
Yeah. Very much so, very much so.
Yeah. Yeah, just that whole, anything that we try to do as a community, like, we put together Pride because, we are proud to be queer. We want a place where we can just be openly queer around other people that are openly queer and not have to worry about it. And, every year there's more and more, like, people from the outside that are putting pressure on what Pride should and shouldn't look like. And we're like,
Yeah.
this isn't your thing. Like, this is our thing.
Yeah.
One of the interesting transitions I thought, though, was at the very beginning when Loki is surrounded by all the other Lokis. He's like, this is a nightmare. Like, being surrounded by himself was kind of like a nightmare. And
That
I think that's kind of...
Oh, no, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, and I think that's kind of interesting as well. I know that when I was, like, not really sure that I was queer or not, I kind of shied away from people who were, like, very obviously aggressively in your face queer. Like, there was definitely a
Interesting.
time where I'm like, oh my god. I mean, I can understand being being trans male or trans female or, like, whatever, but being in the middle... And I thought that was progressive at the time, and I realize now that, like, a lot of that attitude that I had toward those people was because, like, I deeply wished that I could just be me and not feel ashamed of it, and I didn't have that freedom.
Interesting.
And
Taking
when I
that
started being myself, I didn't have that anymore, and I started needing to be around those people.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that you took that internal thing and like put it on to someone else, eventually leading to you examining it and putting it back onto yourself. I think that's a
Yeah.
really. I'm a very visual thinker, so that I would visualize that as I came to that conclusion. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I think that sometimes the things that hurt the most are the things that are too close to home. I
Yeah.
was joking with a friend of mine earlier today that the best way to know whether or not you're autistic, if you can't afford a psychiatrist, is just to go on TikTok for a while. And if you end up on autism TikTok, TikTok has probably diagnosed you. Because it just seems like algorithms and stuff like that can, like, pick out traits with people and, like, put them into the internet grouping of people before they even realize they belong there. A lot of my friends, like, I ended up on non-binary TikTok before I realized I was a non-binary, and I was like, oh wait, all of these TikToks really resound. They really hit close to home. And at first I'm like, oh, I don't like that. But then it was like, wait, but what if I do?
Yeah. I think about the dissemination of social medias and how initially the social media platform you picked was a part, like, was the personality. Are you a
Yeah.
Twitter person? Are you a Facebook person? Are you
Oh
a
my God, yeah.
MySpace person? And now it's gotten
You have
to
to have
the
everything.
you have to have everything, and they all represent different aspects of
And your
yourself instead
personality.
of it all being one. Like, I'm mostly on Twitter because
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly a
Shit poster.
yeah, yeah, basically yes. And
Same.
Instagram, like I'm on Instagram and I look at things and I post things sometime, but like Instagram doesn't grab much of my identity versus Twitter. I feels like allows me to just expressly direct something directly from my brain, where
Yeah.
Instagram is like open to interpretation because it's so visual. So there are still aspects of that, but and I haven't even looked at what the studies must be like for Gen Z and how they interact with these spaces.
Yeah.
Or queer Gen Z. What is that like? What are those circles like right now?
I mean, TikTok. There's a
Yeah.
lot of TikTok right now, especially with the pandemic. I mean, honestly, queer Gen Z makes me like it's one of the few pieces of hope that I have because while sometimes they can be a little bit misguided and they are making a few, some of the same missteps that our like they're making the same generation that our generation did on the same mistakes that our generation did on LiveJournal, and then the generation after that it did on Tumblr. They're just doing it on TikTok, and it's just like, okay, could you just like go on Tumblr and see that we've already had all of these discussions about queer identity and like come to the conclusion that it's okay? Like, come on. But for the
Right.
most part, they are very, very aware of gender and dysphoria and all of these things in a way that I didn't know. Like, I learned a lot about different types. Because I've always looked at myself and been like, okay, I'm pretty happy with my body, so therefore I can't be trans because my physical form is what I want it to be. But then I'm like, how I'm perceived in the world, how I'm treated in the world, things like that. What I want to be associated with, how I feel mentally, how I perceive myself mentally,
Yeah.
is often a lot more masculine. And it took being exposed to the language of self-analysis to actually be able to do the self-analysis.
Yeah, that's really really profound. Yeah, because you don't know how to talk about the things you don't know how to talk about until you
Yeah.
learn the vocabulary for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. I had never
Yeah.
heard it expressed in that way of like um not having the tools, because I guess you don't even know the tools you need
Yeah, exactly.
until you start.
I have this thing that like people speak in the languages that they're taught. So like a child that, is yelled at a lot, when they grow up and to be an adult, their first reaction in situations that they don't understand is to yell because that's the language and the presentation kind of, I guess, that they've kind of been normalized for them. When you give them psychiatry and like these are actual emotions, this isn't actual anger, it's frustration, you can handle frustration by these ways. You
Yeah.
give them the tools not only to understand what they're going through but also to get better at handling it. It's fascinating how much you deprive a human being by depriving them of language, and that's one of my things that I get really frustrated with nonverbal autistic people and not giving them access to alternate speaking and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I digress. I think that the access to some form of communication, whether it be speech or pictures, that allows you to identify yourself and your purpose and things like that, it's really critical to actually knowing who you are and being able to express who you are to other people to find the right people.
Yeah, and I imagine that's an ever evolving, ever growing thing.
Hmm.
Because much like with any kind of communication, the better you get at it, the more nuanced ideas you can bring out
Exactly.
within it.
Exactly.
That's super interesting to me.
We went deep into psychiatry territory today.
Love it, love it.
But yeah, I think that you kind of see that with the Lokis too. I feel like maybe it's not specifically language or verbiage, but I think in their they've been told, your failures, this is what you do, this is who you are, and they've like internalized that. They've internalized that language. It's kind of like negative self-talk and, other people's like
Yeah.
negging on you and how that impacts you psychologically. They've internalized all of these things about them, and part of this episode was the Loki's learning how to be like, wait, these limits that I think I have are just me not knowing what I'm capable of.
Right. And that's something they've both expressed at this point now too,
Yes.
of like, I'm not good at this, but they
Yeah.
are starting to recognize that it is a
And they're
thing that you
honest
could be
about
good
it.
at. Yeah.
They're honest about it. I love that. Oh, my little disaster babies.
Well, thanks for watching this episode of the show. We had such a great time talking about the hero's journey and not being able to return home is one of the big queer themes. Sorry that we skipped over the history segment, but the episodes are running long and we just had so many theories, so we're just thinking about the future at this point. I would encourage you to subscribe to all of our other podcasts that are popping up on screen here. If you're into podcasts, we have stuff based around movies, video games, and current event things. We also have a Patreon, like I said at the beginning, patreon.com/Montressor Access is $1 a month. There are other tiers that you can help us out with where we have brand new merch now that we can send you. That's exciting. And also, if you would like to join our Discord and keep the conversation going there, I asked a bunch of questions throughout the episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts on just where you're at with stuff. I don't even care if your theories are crazy. I want to hear them because sometimes
them.
they're the most fun to think about.
Yeah.
I think that's going to do it for this episode. I've had a great time. I'm looking forward to the last two.
Me too. Very, very excited. So, Seth, did Loki suck dick this episode?
There was this sloppy, and I mean sloppy. Let me see your subscribe face. Subscribe!
No.